Alright, let's get into it. Turn off that good meditation music. Let's get into it, man. Trap Lil Ross. First day of Durk trial. Let's watch it. Reaction. See what they got going on.
Okay, folks, so I'm back outside the courthouse. It is official. Lil Durk's murder for hire trial has now started. The first day of trial has begun. I was back in the courtroom. Okay, it was very, very interesting today, and there was a lot going on. So things were a little bit different in today's session. Okay, we went to the main courtroom where Lil Durk and them were going to be. They basically brought in like 80 jurors. They basically said, look, there's so many people that actually need to be in this courtroom juror-wise. We're going to basically put all the media, all of the reporters, we're going to put you in another courtroom downstairs. We're going to have a live audio feed, so you guys are going to be able to hear everything. We don't want you to see the jurors at this point, but you're going to be able to basically hear everything that's going on. And, you know, we saw people walking into the court. I saw Brian Steele in the hallway, bringing that aura as always, okay? But basically, it kind of all went forward, and there were some very, very interesting things. Now, there was rumors that there was going to be some kind of Free Durk protest today outside the court. Now, I didn't see that, but what I did see was a lot of Lil Durk supporters in the courtroom. There were people giving out Free Durk pamphlets, postcards. I got given a whole bunch of very interesting little Free Durk postcards, which I hope I still got here. Like, shout out to the Durk supporters that were showing love and giving out this kind of thing. Like, we got these little free Lil Durk kind of postcards going on. And look, even though like I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go down. All right, respect to the people that are kind of doing their thing and, you know, showing support, printing things up. They had a whole Free Durk magazine in there, and you know, they said there were going to be some more copies of it available soon. I had a look through one, but I didn't get to keep one. But it was very, 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 very interesting. A lot of support in the courtroom for Durk today. I would say like more support than I really had seen. A lot of people in there. More.
No, I wish he'd come on and get to the fat meat that we know is greasy. Because talking about these Free Durk pamphlets is not what I came here to see, Trap Lil Ross. What you doing, baby? Let's go.
People than I'm used to seeing in there, but it wasn't completely packed out by any means yet. So basically from here, okay, the judge arrived at about 8:45, so things were starting a lot earlier than they usually have done in these previous hearings. The judge basically said that he wanted all the defendants to sit at the same table. There was like a weird little back and forth about where people were sitting. They felt like, I think Didi was kind of sat at a slightly separate table. They said, no, I don't want him floating off on his own table. We need everybody at the right spots and all together. But apparently there was some kind of drama where they said wherever Didi was sat, you could see his foot shackles. Obviously, you know, they're allowed to have kind of their own outfits. They're not in the prison clothing anymore. But, you know, Didi was basically apparently, you know, in a position where they said, oh, the jury can see his foot shackles. That's kind of prejudice. You know, that wouldn't be allowed, basically. And they kind of moved them around. They said that they were going to, I think Didi's lawyer was angling for the foot shackles to be taken off, but the judge was basically like, nah, the marshal says foot shackles got to stay on. They got to stay on. And that was that. So they kind of moved them around. They basically got them to where they wanted to be. And then we kind of got to things. And the judge, look, respect to the judge, I think this judge has been very fair. The judge made a very small mistake that was kind of like, it felt like a big deal in the courtroom. I don't think it's going to really affect things, but there was a pretty wild moment where the judge kind of misspoke a little bit.
Real quick, let's touch on them shackles. Didi's lawyer really wanted the jury to be able to see them shackles so that it could become prejudice for them, and they could feel some type of way and feel sorry for them to see them in them shackles looking like slaves, since we know prisons is the new slavery. Let's get to it.
And it was like gasps in the courtroom. I'm going to tell you about that in a sec. But basically, the judge kind of, you know, got to the statement of the case. There was apparently an objection by the defense. They said that there was a sentence in the way that the state were planning on putting forward the charges and explaining the kind of, you know, the trial indictment that they weren't entirely happy with. And there was basically kind of like a sentence that they wanted taken out. The judge overruled that. They basically said, nah, we keeping it in, like we having it as exactly as it's supposed to be. It is what it is. And then Dee Dee's lawyer said, that Dee Dee shouldn't be mentioned specifically about the revenge motive. They said, well, it alleges the motive for Mr. Banks and the motive for all the co-conspirators. The judge said, look, we're going to have it say that all the co-conspirators conspired to murder Quando Rondo as revenge for the death of King Von. And so basically, the prosecutors kind of broke down what was going to be said. The judge kind of agreed, signed off on what was going to be said. Basically, this is the story that the jurors were told, okay? They said, all these co-conspirators conspired to murder Quando Rondo as revenge for the death of King Von, and basically the judge would be planning to read the defendant's not guilty plea. The judge basically said, should any agents of the defense get hold of the jurors' names, should that be allowed? And basically what was interesting was Drew Findling and Brian Steele basically said, look, we got one person that's from Atlanta. They're basically like, they're an agent of the defense. We think they should get the jurors' names. We're going to have one designated person who's going to be able to do a little bit of research into their backstories, but not a bunch of people. We can't let the defendants know. We can't let all other types of lawyers back in Atlanta, all this kind of stuff. No, one person is going to be allowed. And the judge said that was allowed. They basically said, look, we don't want to impugn the defense, but the more people that know, the more likely that it's going to leak who these jurors are, what their names are. And basically the judge said, you can tell this one person who the...
I started trading out of college, actually. So I've been trading for a long time. I learned a lot about psychology. I learned a lot about the methods. I recommend this to all traders, but especially to ones.
Jurors' names are, they can do their due diligence into them. Either side can investigate the jurors, but it's not really a good thing. He doesn't want excess, digging and investigating and reaching into the jurors' pasts. But, they are allowed on either side to just do a little cursory check to find out whether or not the jurors know anything deeper than maybe what we would expect them to know. Now, Drew Findling on the defense, obviously, he killed it in the last hearing. He did a really great job on that. And pretty much we kind of heard from him that, they had a certain attorney that was kind of trusted. They passed the bar in Atlanta. They were there to help and do some additional investigation. And they basically said that the government has their own kind of agent that is going to look into the jurors' names, find out what's going on. And basically said, it was quite funny because the prosecution were like, well, what is that person going to do with the names? And the judge was like, well, they're going to look into them. Like, that's is what it is. They can't have someone else look into them. There's this one person. They're going to do online searches, just a limited amount of additional investigation to the jurors to make sure that there is nothing improper going on. That's going to be in addition to the questionnaires that are going to be handed out, that have already been handed out to the jurors. And basically, the judge went over what the jurors would be told. They said the jurors' names can only be revealed to these lawyers and one case agent on either side. These names are not typically released, and basically they were trying to protect the privacy of the jury, which makes complete sense. Now, the judge brought the jurors in, introduced the lawyers, and got the statement of the case as was agreed before the jury was in. So they agreed what was going to be said before the jury was brought in. Then the jury was brought in and basically were explained by the prosecution what the allegations are. The judge emphasized that the jurors are taken under oath. Everybody is taken under oath, and they're expected to be truthful in anything they say. The judge also said we're going to talk about the gang issue. Questions about gangs are allowed, but this isn't a gang case. The gang is...
Hey. Nah, I'm gonna let the video keep going, but I gotta pay attention to the fact that he holding this big ass green book or reading that mother like green eggs and ham. You hear me? I do love green eggs and ham. Sam I Am looking at it. He looked like Sam I Am, the real Sam I Am.
What kind of connects the relationship between the co-defendants and the motive. King Von's, senior leadership as a black disciple is a big part of why they wanted to get revenge of him. But it wasn't a GDBD gang war. They didn't kill Quando Rondo because he was an op. They killed him because he had been involved in a rap beef with King Von, who was a famous gangster, and unfortunately lost his life in that quarrel. Now, they basically said the jury isn't allowed to ask if someone's a member of a gang. They can listen to the testimony and they can kind of get an understanding and decide what they believe. And the judge made it very, very clear. They said that, look, they could decide based on the testimony that they don't believe any of these guys are in a gang, but they still think they committed the murder, and vice versa. They said the jury could decide based on the testimony, yeah, everybody's all part of the gangs, they're all BDs, but they didn't conspire to commit this particular murder. So it was very, very clear, and the judge gave really great instructions just to as far as like where this gang motive starts and ends. We can talk about the gangs that connect these guys, but the gang doesn't dictate the actual murder. It gives a motive. I mean, it's hard to understand, but it's like, it's the motive for avenging King Von is his leadership in the gang. They didn't kill Quando Rondo because of the gang he's in. Quando, a rolling 60 from Georgia, a whole separate thing, completely unrelated, and they made that very, very, very clear. And so basically, after that, the judge made it clear the public is going to be listening into this, even if there's not enough room in the courtroom. They're going to have an audio feed, and that basically tomorrow they're expecting to be allowing all of the public into the courtroom. The judge said they need all the space for the jurors, but he is not intending to have a lottery system by the sounds of it. He is intending to have as many members of the public in the courtroom as possibly allowed. Brian went on to basically say, interesting back and forth. Brian asked the question and said, if an objection is made by another lawyer, so for example, if Didi or Brown Eyes' lawyer makes an objection and they're not working for Durk, is this all going to be included? And basically what the judge confirmed was that unless if Didi's lawyer makes an objection, Brian Steele and them, and Drew Findling, they have to opt out and say, we don't want to be part of that objection. Otherwise, the judge is going to assume that all of their objections are included as one unit, basically. So the judge said he doesn't see that being a big issue. Certain objections might be made by certain defendants. They were joined together in all the filings. They're co-defendants. He's made it clear what exhibits were allowed. They didn't go over that in this one. And basically, they went over this thing with the leg shackles, and they said, the jury can see Didi's shackles. Let's get him moved. Can we take him off? No, they can't take him off. We're going to leave him on, but we need to move him so that they can't see them. And the judge agreed it would be prejudicial if the jury could see the leg shackles.
Hey man, he said that. You said that 8 minutes ago, man. 8 minutes ago, man, you told us that, man. Come on, man. What else they doing in the courtroom, man? Get to the fat meat we know is crazy.
So that was that. From there, Didi kind of was moved around. They got people to where they wanted to be. Didi was put in the first row. Obviously, you couldn't see his feet in the first row, and that was that. So there was a short break, and then the court resumed at around 10:12 a.m. The jury was seated. Okay, the press were in a separate room, listening to everything in an audio feed, and I made all my notes on the audio feed at that point. So the judge basically claimed that the jurors' job, he explained to the jurors what their job is, what they're doing. He said the goal is we're going to turn 80 jurors into 16, 12 full-blown jurors and 4 alternates over the next 2 days. That's the plan. And they said that all jurors will have to come back tomorrow. Likely, even all 80 jurors have to come back tomorrow, because I was thinking, they're going to work it all out today. But what ended up happening was they did half a day. They gave the questionnaire out. They explained everything to the jurors, and they said, go away. You all got to come back tomorrow, and then we're going to work out who's who. Now, what was really interesting is all of the jurors are numbered, and he basically said, it was really interesting. I was thinking, it's going to be random. They're going to pick who they want. No, they number all the jurors from the start. Number 1 to 12 are assumed to be the main jurors, and then from there they go on to eliminate that initial 12, and they bring in people from later. But the judge made it clear, juror 1 is obviously more likely to be on the final jury than juror number 80, but that doesn't mean juror 80's got no shot. They might eliminate juror 1, 4, 5, 10, and then they might grab juror 72, they might grab juror 65. But they said that it's starting sequentially, so in theory, if there's no objections, number 1 to 12 will end up being the actual jury that ends up being used, which I just thought was quite fascinating, to be honest with you guys. So from there, okay, my coffee has run out, so we are now.
Pause, hold on. That nigga talking so much he had to take a water break. Your water sucks. He really sucks. Look, Adam Sandler, water boy looking at that nigga, man. You got this tie tight as hell with the top button undone. What you got the tie tight for the top button undone, man? Come on, man. What are we doing, man? Get to what we know the fat meat is crazy, man. Come on.
Switching to the Gatorade. So, can you open that for me, please? Thank you. So basically, after that, thank you very much. After that, we then kind of moved on. The judge kind of explained all the different people that were going to be involved in the proceedings, their own role in this situation, the people that were assisting them in court, all that kind of thing. And he said the trial is estimated to last a total of 3 weeks. He said tomorrow afternoon is the official start of the actual trial. He is aiming to have opening statements made tomorrow, but obviously that's not confirmed. They said he's aiming for the trial to take 2 weeks. There's going to be a Labor Day break. I guess that's like, in the UK we call it a bank holiday. Here it's what's it called? What do you call it here? Like a national holiday, or like a national holiday? Okay, so There'll be a break for Labor Day. I don't know how long that's going to be, if that's a day. I don't know how they do things over here. But
I run a podcast solo. No producer, no editor, no tech skills, just Riverside. I get high quality podcast recordings right from my room.
They basically said the third week should be the final week, but a fourth week is possible. Deliberations could reach into the fourth week if they're taking their time. Could happen quicker. But I think the judge wants this done in 2 weeks. I think if the judge has his way, this would all be wrapped up in 2 weeks. But it's a complicated case, so who knows if that will actually end up being the case.
When he said he don't know how they do things over here, I wonder what type of holidays do they got in other countries that we don't got here. We're going to have to find that out, y'all. But let's get to where we know the fat meat is crazy, man. Come on.
So the judge made it very clear there would be questions that are asked to determine who's appropriate to be on the jury. The questionnaire is long but simple, he said. He said it's yes or no answers. It's not complex. It's not a case of right or wrong answers. It's not a pop quiz or a test. He said it's not a case of right or wrong answers. It's a case of truthful answers or complete answers or incomplete answers. So he said that he's given them the questionnaire today. He's given them instructions on it. That will be completed and handed over by tomorrow. It will be scanned. All sides will be allowed to receive that. Excuse me. It's dusty downtown right now, man. But anyway, he said, look, nothing is certain, all right? He said that you just got to be...
Hey, man. Don't be taking no shots at America on the slide, man. Where you at, in L.A.? Hey, you know, we pull up. Because right now, we still sliding for Vaughn at this point, you know? Can't you tell? Niggas' lives is on the line for slide for Vaughn. It ain't over with. They said, we tour till you die, nigga. Ain't that what Vaughn told?
Be honest and truthful in your questionnaire. He said some people might be excluded due to hardships. If people are, you know, it's not feasible for them in their financial situation to attend every single day. If they got childcare obligations, if they got family obligations, if they got sick family that they're the only people can look after. Various different reasons. If you are a business owner and you're the sole business owner and your business is financially going to suffer by you not being there, he said that he could give you hardship. But he said basically no one has, he could say no one has a true hardship. He's saying that he's got to balance like how important it is for this case to get tried with honest and straight up jurors in combination with who has actually got genuine hardship. And he said he might not accept any excuses. It depends what's going on. Each party on both the prosecution and the defense have the right to exclude for the reasons that they put forward. They said that in some cases, if they just don't like the look of them, or if they've just got a bad feeling about some of them, they can exclude them. They don't necessarily need strict reasons, but obviously there will be reasons, and there will be information from those questionnaires and things like that. So court is set to take place 8:30 to 4:30 every day with a lunch break. They're going to be pretty intense days. Obviously, the hearings have been starting at 10 a.m., getting up super early. We're on David timing now, okay? So I got there pretty early. I wasn't the first person. I was like the third person. Shout out to the couple other people that got there before me. But people are taking this very seriously and getting down there early. So they basically went on to say that this questionnaire that they're giving to the jurors is not being released publicly. It doesn't have the jurors' names on it. They're just numbered. They basically said that you've just got to be honest. If you're not honest, you could be charged with perjury. They said that it's not normal in federal court to release names of jurors. The questionnaires don't have the names of the jurors on. They're just numbered. And these numbers will correspond to the juror. And that's basically what's going to determine the corresponding information. If there's information about a juror from the questionnaire, they're not saying their name. They're not saying, hey, this Steve Smith, I made that name up by the way, but Steve Smith is a massive fan of Lil Durk, he should be excluded, etc. So from there, like I say, the judge said if you're not honest on these questionnaires or at any point, you could be charged. Etc. So from there, like I say, the judge said if you're not honest on these questionnaires or at any point, you could be charged with perjury. Criminal counts are basically put against the defendants in order to get things going. So he basically explained what an indictment is, what these criminal counts were, how charges start, and he made it very clear to the jury. They said, look, an indictment doesn't prove anything. I'm sure Durk and his lawyers were very pleased to hear that. Obviously, the judge is being very fair. He's giving very good instructions. And he said, I'm going to give instructions that the jurors must follow. It doesn't matter if you don't like the law law. Doesn't matter if you disagree with the law. If you think murder for hire, get back for bond should be allowed, that doesn't give you the right to basically dictate what happens in this case. The judge is going to direct you to follow the law of the land, the case law, the precedents from previous legal cases. Just because you don't like the law doesn't mean that you can rule in contrary to it. Now, what was interesting is the judge says, look, he didn't say that he disagrees with the laws, but he said that goes for me too. I have to follow the laws that were passed and precedented. We're all obliged to follow them. The judge didn't say this, but he was basically saying there's probably laws that judge doesn't agree with, and he says it's your right as an American to disagree with the government. It's your right as an American to lobby. You can protest. You can, petition for the law to be changed, but that doesn't mean that when you're sat in that jury chair, in that jury deliberation.
Alright, man, now the judge putting on the show. The judge putting on the show. He came to clap it up for the judge, man. The judge putting on the show in the courtroom, because he know that is not how it work out here in America. Come on, man, get to work, fat meat is crazy, man.
Room that you can make personal decisions on what the outcome of a case should be contrary to the law. The judge is going to tell you what the law is, what the precedent is, how the evidence should be interpreted in a proper way that's consistent with the law, and they're going to have to rule on that basis. So the judge was just doing an amazing job, to be honest. They basically said, what is up to you? It's not up to you what laws and precedents you should follow, but what is up to you is to decide.
What if you could make a song using only your voice? Let's start with the drums.
I ain't gonna hold you, that beat she making weak as a motherfucker, but shit, I knocked the boots off little AI. You heard me? You heard me? Let me skip, man. Let me quit playing with these commercials, man. Quit playing with these folk ads, man. For real, man.
Who to believe, to interpret the exhibits, and decide what you think of them. Now, again, this was really interesting because obviously we're hearing all of this talk from Durk's team talking about, these witnesses, these snitches, these participating witnesses, they can't be trusted because they've taken proffer agreements, and proffer agreements, they're going to say anything they have to get out of trouble. Well, the judge has made it very clear, having a proffer agreement doesn't make somebody inherently untrustworthy. All of these agreements were made under oath. And basically, if the jury judges them based on what they said as not being truthful, then that is what it is. That's a separate issue. But they can't make up the law in themselves. They can't say because someone took a proffer they're untrustworthy. They're going to listen to their words. And if the juror says, hey, all of you lot are cappers, liars.
I'm telling y'all off the flat. I'm the first one to call it. They talking about a proffer agreement because your boy Jam took a proffer. Jam took a proffer more than likely. I'm going to say Jam, number one, I'm going to say Vonnie. Vonnie got the number one proffer agreement. And I'm going to say Jam took the second one if he didn't get the first one. But I'm going to go with Vonnie getting the first one for real. Maybe Jam, really, since they say he probably was wearing a wire day one since he got out. Shit.
Don't trust none of you, then the jury can make that decision and deliberate on the basis that they don't believe people are trustworthy. They said what they can't do is decide who they're going to believe before they talk based on any kind of prejudice. He didn't say this, but he basically inferred that, like, look, if you're a racist, based on somebody's race or based on somebody's background or their age, you can't just take one look at them and say, I don't believe this guy. That's not proper, that's not allowed, and you can't be doing that. So after that, the judge made all that very clear, and then it was the prosecution's opportunity to summarize the indictment charges. So I'll tell you what was said, and they summarized it based on what was pre-agreed, but I'll give you the pretty much exact wording of what they said because it was interesting. And again, I'd say it does lean a little bit towards the prosecution because they have an opportunity to paint the narrative that they want through the way that they introduce these charges. They're telling it like a story. They're not saying count one, count two, count three like an indictment. They're basically telling their version of the story of what they think happened. So here's what they said. They said these defendants, I'll use the nicknames, but obviously they said the real names and the nicknames. These defendants, Lil Durk, Dee and Brown Eyes, are charged in this. The allegation is that these defendants co-conspired to kill Quando Rondo. They said Taekwon Bowman, aka Quando Rondo, they said this was as part of a stalking and murder for hire allegation. They tracked the car all through Los Angeles. They tried to kill Quando Rondo as part of their stalking and murder for hire. They ended up killing the wrong person. They killed Savia Robinson, Lil Pab. The co-conspirators tried to kill Quando Rondo as revenge for the killing of King Von, and there were 5 counts that basically summarized the whole situation, which was like this overall stalking in relation to the murder, stalking Quando, stalking Savia Robinson, the murder for hire, and stalking that resulted in murder. So this part was crazy, and look, this is no disrespect, no shade to the judge, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but after that was read, the judge accidentally had a little slip of the tongue and said, okay, so these defendants have all pled guilty to these charges, and it was like audible gasps in the courtroom. Everyone was like, wait, what? Huh? Like, huh? It was like, wait, what? And then the judge was like, oh, my bad, I said they meant not guilty. Now, look, I'll be honest with you, I think it was just like a little slip of the tongue. Everything was moving fast. This was a big moment. I don't know, that could be something that Brian Steele and Drew Findling would be like, if they were being hysterical, they could have said, oh, you've tainted the whole jury, like you've said to the jury that they pled guilty when they didn't. But realistically, he corrected himself straight away. It was a slip of the tongue. This judge has been absolutely brilliant on all bases, been very, very fair. But that was almost like everyone in the courtroom, when he said guilty, everyone sort of was like, huh? It was like, wait a minute, have they just taken a plea? Like, what the hell? But obviously that wasn't the case. The judge corrected himself, and then from there on, I felt like he was very, very eloquent. Like there was not a word out of turn after that. So yeah, I don't know exactly what was going on with that, but obviously no disrespect to the judge. I think the judge is great. Just we're only human. There's a lot going on. It's high pressure. There's 80 people all watching him. But that was a moment where for a minute it seemed like, wait a minute, is this case about to be something completely different to what we were expecting? It was crazy. Honestly, it was crazy. So after that, all of the jurors were sworn in. Obviously, they had.
I ain't gonna hold you. They might have wanted to stop the judge. Judge, you might have just said something we all been wanting to do. The prosecution, y'all got a deal on the table. What y'all want to do? We'll snatch out on that 30. Shit. Murder for hire. Woo-wee. Now I like where we going. He get to where that fat man crazy. Let's get to it, baby. Let's get to it.
To be truthful, the judge gave preliminary instructions for completing that questionnaire. So he said that this was all done to avoid wasting time. We're not going to ask you this stuff one by one on the stand. We'll be here forever. So he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you all here, give you instructions, give you the questionnaire. You take those away this afternoon, and we're going to meet back up tomorrow and go over what everything was said in those questionnaires with a fine-tooth comb. Now, he told them, you're legally obliged to tell the truth, and you cannot discuss this. When you fill out this questionnaire in the jury room and you go home, you cannot discuss any details of this case with anyone. That includes your friends, your family, anyone. Like, you got to go, and you're sworn to secrecy. You're sworn omerta, like you're in the mafia, okay? But the legal mafia. But anyway, the justice system.
Attention retirees, if you're willing to be...
They knew when to put that commercial in there. They knew when to put that commercial because that's when the lies was for the start. Justice system. Come on, man. Come on, man. Ain't no justice in this system, man. Come on, man.
Do not communicate on social media about anything to do with this case. And this is where it got very interesting. I was thinking, I hope they don't bring my name up. But they said, do not do any online research on the case, on the defendants, on the lawyers. No online searches, no news stories, no TV shows. I was thinking, I hope you don't say YouTube documentaries, but he didn't say that. So
hey, he better hope they was saying his name with that giant ass. Look at that giant ass. Hey, no disrespect, Trap Lord. We just joking, man. We just joking over here, man. Don't get us took down, man. But nah, man, for real. He better hope that.
But after that, he basically explained, look, there's other issues that were going on. He said the first set of questions, the first set of questions on the questionnaire, they're just basic background questions. They wanted to know your area. He said, do not put your full address on the questionnaire. We don't want to know your address, don't want to know your street, we don't want to know your apartment number. He just said the location, the area, and he gave examples. He said in Los Angeles, there's a lot of different areas. There's Hollywood, Los Feliz, whatever. I can't remember where they said, all right? But he basically said a bunch of places. He said, that's the limit. That's all we want to know, all right? He said, we want to know your employment status. And he said a lot of very, very interesting things. He said it's alleged that the rap music culture is relevant to this. He said, so if you live with a music executive, if you live with someone in law enforcement, if you've done past jury experience, if you know anything about this, and this was crazy, this killed me, okay? He said there will be questions in this questionnaire about your music taste. So I don't know, they're going to be asking them if they're into Chicago drill, if they're Chiracologists. He didn't say this, but I'm thinking, is he going to ask them if they're on Reddit or any of that stuff? But I don't know, maybe that's just me. But he said one of the defendants.
Hey, what if he hit him with some lyrics in there and be like, what you think about this lyric right here? Do you think he guilty or not guilty? What he say? I ain't trying to squash no beef, nigga. We into it till you die. Real street, nigga. Hey, remember that? What he say? The comments in there be trolling me? What if he asks some questions like that? Do you think they're guilty or not guilty?
He's a very well-known musician. He said rap culture is a big part of what ties these defendants together. He said you might know rap music or you might know the defendant specifically. Obviously, they said Lil Durk and his nickname when they introduced charges. They said Lil Durk, Didi, or D-Ski, which obviously is his rap name. As far as I'm aware, I ain't never heard no music from Brown Eyes. But anyway, they basically went on and they said that, look, I could have got this wrong because this part just flew by, but I feel like he said that he's hoping that this whole thing will be done by the 14th of September. And then he kind of was like, it could change. That's what I thought he said, it could be done by the 14th, which would kind of add up. But anyway, he said that he's going to ask them in the questionnaire about their personal hardships, if they've got any prepaid vacations that are conflict with the estimated timing of this date, these court dates, this trial. Do they have childcare obligations that they can't get out of? Are any of them sole business owners that are responsible for their own financial income that will be harmed if they're forced to come to the courthouse every single day? He said he's going to be tough but fair on this. He said jury service, I thought this was really poetic. He said jury service is a duty and a privilege. He said jury service predates the United States of America as it exists. He said they had juries in relation to crimes in colonial times. Before the US was even a thing, we were sitting together as juries. I was getting a history lesson. I thought it was really fascinating and really important, and it just goes to show you that the actual justice system and this process that Lil Durk's going through, this predates America in itself. Now, he said, look, I'll be fair. He was like, back in them times, the only people that could be on jurors were white landowners, and he said that would be appalling today. That's why this is going to be a diverse community of people that are invited to be on this jury. He said, I need to know about any mental or physical illnesses that are relevant that will, impede your ability to appear as part of this jury to make decisions. He said he's going to ask them if they've ever heard anything about any of the defendants or the crime on the news when it happened. He made it very clear when this murder happened, this was very high profile. It happened outside the Beverly Center. It was mainstream news all over the world. The footage of Quando screaming on the news was on TMZ. This was massive news in LA, all over the United States, all over the world. I was in the UK still when this happened.
That boy Quando was on the media saying, that's not funny.
And I just could not believe it. I was dumbfounded by this news. So, interestingly, when I was at the David trial, I was asking other reporters, you're going to cover the Durk trial, and there were people that were like, I don't know who Durk is. Who's that? So, I think there are going to be plenty of people that don't know who Durk is. We are in a sort of social media, rap music, drill music bubble sometimes. But at the same time, the judge kind of said, look, knowing who Lil Durk is doesn't necessarily impede you from being on this jury, but specific things that are going to tie you to this case or any sort of biases is not going to be okay. He said being aware of the case and the murder that happened at the Beverly Center doesn't mean that you can't serve on the jury, but you have to tell them, you have to let them know. They said if you know anything about the defendants, the victims, the judge, the lawyers, etc., you need to let us know and we're going to work it out from there. So they're given a long list of all the potential witnesses. They said, look, don't be scared. You got 35 witnesses from the government, 25 witnesses from Durk. Not necessarily all of them are going to be included. Just if you recognize any of these names, let us know. He then got into the whole gang situation, which was very important. He made it very clear. He said, look, being asked questions about gangs, it doesn't infer anything. He said, this isn't a gang case. He said the government is in their rights to say that certain co-conspirators and defendants have affiliations from Chicago gangs back in the day. Their gang affiliation is what brings them together. It's what's part of the alleged motivation for avenging King Von, but the murder, the crime itself, is not gang related. They said the defendants are charged with crimes that aren't gang crimes. They said you could decide if you believe the government's narrative, but the guilt for these actual murders is separate. So even if you're completely convinced that they're all in a gang, they all grew up in Taytown, they all grew up in Lamron, they all grew up in the BDs, the Black Disciples, O Block, all of that stuff, you can believe that all of that is true, but you can say, yeah, but I don't think they did this murder. The murder's not gang related. The gang this is the best way I can say it. The gang ties, though, aren't indicative of the murder definitely being committed by these defendants, and that was very fair. He made it clear to the jury there's a small amount of gang evidence that is going to play a small role in this case. They basically, he made it very clear the potential punishment for this case is determined by him or the judge, not the jury. So you guys thinking, I feel bad, I don't want to give him a guilty because he's going to do life in jail. He said, that ain't your problem, that ain't your concern. The question that is being asked of you guys is, did they commit this murder for hire, these stalking charges? So they said that the jury is allowed to form or express their own opinion on the case, but they're not allowed to, they're allowed to form an opinion on the case. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. They basically said that the jury is allowed to take in all the information from the case, but they're not allowed to express their fully formulated opinion until deliberation. They're allowed to take in that info, they're allowed to think about it. You know, they might be convinced one day, oh, he did it. The next day they hear some amazing evidence that turns that around. And they said, until you get to that deliberation stage, you guys aren't allowed to sit around and be like, yeah, I think he did it. So he made that clear, and that was really important. So it's like, obviously you're going to build up a picture of what you think day by day, but he said until you get to that deliberation, you can't be sat around saying, I think he did it, this, that, or the other. If you ever seen the film 12 Angry Men, you know how this stuff's supposed to go down. But anyway, they said you are forbidden from reading or watching any accounts of the case. They said if you inadvertently hear about the case, any details about the people involved, you have to tell the judge. That doesn't necessarily disqualify you. If you accidentally saw something on your algorithm related to this case, you know, halfway through, you got to tell the judge, hey, look, I saw some shit, I'm sorry. All right, who knows? Who knows what they might see or they may or may not see. So they said the jurors are not free to talk about the case after they leave today. So they left around lunchtime. They obviously fill out their questionnaire and then can go home. Can't talk to your friends, can't talk to your families, can't talk on social media, can't even look the case up. And they said tomorrow the judge is going to respond to any details from the questions. They said this case is significant due to the seriousness of the charges, Lil Pab's death being so horrific, the publicity around it at the time, and the role of rap music being the cause. He said, I know it'll be tempting for you guys to go home and research this case, look at the news about the murder, look at the defendants, go listen to the OTF group. He didn't say that, but you know, that's what that would be like. You'd be tempting to go listen to Loyal Bros 2 by OTF. You know what I'm saying? That would be pretty tempting to go and hear that, where they're talking about all sorts of stuff.
Alright, y'all, I heard that Loyal Bros 2, OTF. We're gonna have to go listen to that one. Even Trap Lil Ross know what's going on. Okay, little English dude, we might like you, man. We might like you.
You're not allowed to do that, alright? Not allowed. Denied. So the judge explained that, you know, all of the rules will be explained to them. You don't need to know about the rappers' careers. You don't really need to know the backstory. Everything that you possibly need to know about this will be revealed to you guys in the course of the trial. And you don't need extra info. You don't need to see the news clip. You don't need nothing. Just basically he was saying, look, shut up. Don't listen to anything. Don't talk to anybody. Everything you need to know about this case is going to be revealed to you in the trial, and we're keeping everything else back from you because it's going to be prejudice. It's going to prejudice your opinion. So from there, they basically said, you got to tell us if you already know them. Anybody, you know, if you've heard a Lil Durk song before, you got to let us know, basically. This is not what he said, but that's what I inferred. They said you might remember details about that incident when it happened on the news. That's fine. Anything else you're going to learn in court. The evidence in court is tested. It comes from witnesses. It includes cross-examination. We don't want you reading random stuff on the internet that's not proven. You know what I'm saying? Maybe some of my videos, all right? He didn't say that, but like, look, I've made a lot of videos speculating about what I believe about this case, what my opinion is. These are just opinions, and I agree. When I make my videos, I say these are just opinions. These are just my own personal research. But from there, he basically made it clear you should not be getting outside third-party information about what you actually think about this case and, you know, how it went down. He said that basically the things on the internet aren't proven. We're going to prove it in a court of law. 16 people will be in the jury room, and this was really funny. He was like, everyone laughed when he said this. He said 16 people will be in the jury room. It'll be like being in the trenches. Now, I think he meant like World War I, but everyone in there is thinking he meant like trench babies from Chirac.
No, that's what we call it. It'd be like being in the trenches. Yeah, you get a taste of America. Welcome to America. Welcome to America, man.
So that was kind of like, everyone laughed when he said that. He said, you're going to be in the trenches. I was thinking, yeah, I'm in the trenches too, reporting on this thing. But he said that everybody will bring different knowledge to the table, different experiences. He said this is going to be a real mix of Americans working together for justice, all right? And there were a few little inspirational moments. I'm not going to lie, this judge goes hard. Like, I like the way the judge was giving history about the importance of what these jurors were doing, like the fact that these jurors are in this position. He said it's a duty and a privilege, all right? You're living in a country where justice is prioritized when these things happen, all right? We're not living in Russia, North Korea, where they're just going to sling you in the gulag because they didn't like a post that you made. They said this is your right as an American to be on the jury, to have a jury, and to have fair justice, and I thought that was really cool. So he said that if you read something stupid on the internet, all right, it could potentially taint the jury. But also, it's not fair if one person knows more. He said if one of you guys goes and watch a bunch of videos and stories about this, it's not fair. You're all supposed to be coming at this at the same level. The jury pool is meant to be an equal playing field. He said just try your best not to find out about the case, all right? He can't promise when the trial ends, but he does promise that you will learn everything that you need to know in the courtroom. You don't need any extra outside information, extracurricular research, all that kind of stuff. So obviously, I think, was that it? The judge kind of ended on that moment. He basically said, yeah. He said, look, you're going to learn everything you need to know. That's the instruction that I'm going to give you. Take your questionnaires, get out of here, you can go. I got out of there, I went and got coffee. And honestly, I think it's going to be really interesting. You know, I did have an opportunity afterwards. As I was leaving, I was actually approached by Big Durk, who's Lil Durk's father. Now, that was really interesting. I've talked before at length about Big Durk, his history. Obviously, he had a very serious case. He was in jail, I want to say off the top of my head, like 27 years or so. You know, he was incarcerated for a long time. He managed to have his lifelong sentence overturned. I believe he was allowed out after 27 years. And it's so unfortunate because he had some period at home with his sons, Lil Durk, D-Thang obviously, and his brother ended up passing away. And now Lil Durk is kind of facing, you know, probably a similar length sentence than his father faced. So, you know, we had a very interesting conversation. We had an understanding. I said it's no disrespect. You know, I reported on W's that Durk takes them. I report when, you know, he has a bad time. And I think we can just hope that this situation is very fair. I think the judge is very fair. And I have the utmost respect for what you do. I told him that I'd seen the positive work that he'd been doing for the community through Chicago Cred, the non-profit organization, which kind of does a lot of outreach.
Let's be real, Trap Lord. You froze up. You froze up when he seen you. You heard me. That's what we call it when them ops catch you. You got to be careful, man.
In Chicago, and I just said I really admire what he's done and that he's an example. You know, I said I admire his commitment to his religion, that he's on his deen, and I just thought it was just a very respectful conversation. So the utmost respect to Big Durk. He's been here absolutely every day, day in, day out, supporting his son. You know, regardless of what you think about Durk or the charges or the situation, obviously he's got a father that loves him, is very, very serious about following the case, you know, showing support for his son. He's been there non-stop, and I just want to pay my respects to Big Durk. You know, no matter what happens, no matter what goes down, whatever the coverage is, he is somebody that I do really respect, and I think he does want positive things for the next generation of Chicago. I'm sure he's very, very upset that this situation is even happening, and it's really a very sad kind of poetic irony that, you know, he went through this damn near 30 years ago or so, and now his son's going through it. So I really do, you know, just want to pay my respects to Big Durk. You know, God bless him. He's been.
I ain't gonna hold you. That's some crazy irony there. Like, for you to go through it and then your son turn around and go through something extremely similar and facing extremely similar type charges and I mean, not necessarily charges, but time in prison away from you and his kids. Like, that's eerie as a mug.
For a lot, he's now somebody that's doing positive things for the streets of Chicago and for the.
Quick story, I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna let him finish it off. I faced a time in my life where I thought that being at a certain age, I was gonna pass away around the same time that my father did. So I was always wondering that too. You know what I mean? So I see how those eerie moments happen. I mean, by the grace of God, I'm still here. That's amazing. But I just know for a fact, hey. Allegedly, he ain't doing it, man.
Yes. and I don't want that to get lost in the process. Even if I've had my opinions about Durk in the past, some of the negative coverage, some of the positive coverage, I'm committed to the truth. Obviously, he's committed to freedom for his son, and I was glad I got a little opportunity to speak to him, because I've seen him a lot in the court, but I haven't actually had that chance to speak to him. So enough respect to Big Durk. But yeah, that's everything that I've got from day one. It was a half day today. I'm going to find out if I'm going to be able to get back in tomorrow. It might be jury selection again, so they might be letting people back into the courtroom. It's kind of up in the air now. I think next week is going to be a lot more structured, and we're going to have a lot more information. But just didn't really see too much else other than a lot of procedural stuff today, which was all that stuff that I gave you now that was interesting. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for supporting my coverage. I'll see you guys in the next video, and for now, I'm out of here, gang. Peace out. Thank you.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI create.
Alright, man. Appreciate you, Trap Lil Ross. Day one Durk trial went crazy, man. Went crazy.